Good morning, Australia. This is Tom Panos coming to you from my studio here in my home. Of course, due to coronavirus, many of the business offices are actually closed in terms of operating out of their premises and people are working from home. I am one of those people and I'm doing everything I can, keeping sanitizer with me, making sure that we are staying safe. Let me start off, guys and girls coming in across Australia for realestate.com on this webinar on vendor paid advertising, that I am going to be doing a detour. And the reason why is it would be negligent and it would be inappropriate not to be touching on what the Australian Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, talked about: auctions open for inspections, auctions in-room, auctions on-site, and I'm going to be touching it on. And the first thing I'm going to say to everyone watching this right now around Australia: calm down. Chill, relax, breathe in, just calm down. We can still do our work and be healthy. We are blessed. Have an attitude of gratitude. Unlike other industries where they have zero options, right now as we speak, and I'm going to put a time on it because things are changing daily, on Thursday morning, Sydney time, 11 o'clock, we can still have appointments at properties with buyers. So what has happened overnight? Let's do a rundown. Firstly, auctions on site or in rooms are no longer allowed. The second thing is, open for inspections are no longer allowed. What I want to do is, in this video webinar with realestate.com, is to participate on the solution, not the problem. And the solution is this. And before I go on, I want to make it very clear. My position, and most good real estate agents I know in Australia are saying to me, our position is that we're choosing health over economics. Be very clear. And in fact, I will say economics will be better when health gets resolved. So we fully support any changes to do with social distancing and the impact it has to real estate. The good news is that many people watching this video can move forward with their lives, but auctions can't be done. So here is a solution. As we speak, if you've got auctions on Sunday, you're to move these auctions, if you can, to today, before midnight. This is Australian law. We can do them before midnight. I myself, as an auctioneer, have got my clients, and I've got auctions now at 7:45, 6:45, 5:45, 4:45, happening in the evening, where we're doing the auctions today, bringing them forward. Buyers get it, vendors get it. That's an option. Option number two is that you convert that property from an auction to a for sale and you start negotiating. Option number three is that you actually wrap up the sale by negotiation prior to auction with one buyer, and good negotiators know how to do that. Option number four is that you do an auction online. There are multiple ways of doing that. One of those ways is that you actually use one of the various companies that offer auctions online, and I'm not going to go off there and name their names and do product pushing. This is not a time for me to be doing any selling or influencing on any products. This is a time for me to give you solutions, and that's one of them. The other solution is this, that you actually use Zoom or Google Hangouts. The buyers, or the bidders, I should say, are in their property. And what they do is that they stay in their property, and you, as an auctioneer, will be at your property. The vendor can be with the real estate agent at the property. And what's going on is the auction is happening by video. People are transparent and they can see the bids. As normal, successful bidder signs a contract and pays a deposit. Once that's done, the agent can go off and actually collect the deposit and sign the contract at the buyer's house. Zoom is an option. Google Hangouts is another option. I want to let people know that that's what you're doing. Some of the other platforms allow you to sign on a screen, which is an iPad, or you can actually just use something like DocuSign or Adobe. But many agents I've spoken to said that they will simply go to the buyer's house and sign the contract. What I want you to understand is we've got to adapt. There's a beautiful line. It says, if you don't like change, you're going to hate extinction. And that's what the Smart Brigade are doing. They're adapting. A couple of other things that I want to touch on. In terms of open for inspections, you are to go to all your marketing collateral, including on realestate.com, and you are to take away the words open for inspection or inspection times. We are now moving into buyer appointments, inspection by appointment. So how does that look like logically, practically, logistically? Here's how you've got to operate your inspection times. Pick 2 hours during the week on a property, say 2 to 3 on a Saturday and 2 to 3 on a Thursday. In your head, what you do is you allocate increments, say 15 minutes, from 2 to 2:15, from 2:15 to 2:30, 2:30 to 2:45, 2:45 to 3 o'clock. And what you're doing is managing buyers and managing your time by when they call and they want to have a look at a property, you actually slip them into one of those slots. That's what you are to do immediately. Think about it. If you did 15-minute increments and you did 2 hours of appointments on a property, you can get 8 appointments done. So guys and girls, listen to me carefully. You're not going to be bombarded with all this extra buyer activity on a property. You're only going to get the serious ones. 8 appointments per week on a property will meet your need to still get property sold. So people ask me, but Tom, what do you say to buyers who are concerned about the current time? Well, firstly, you get rid of your commission breath. You don't sit there and come up with a story. It's all fine. There's no problems, etc. It's simple. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, at the moment, if you're concerned that the marketplace is going to go down, I would suggest that you wait and look at buying at a later time. However, let me tell you, last week, if this is true, and for many agents it is, we'd made X amount of sales. And the reason we did is that intelligent buyers are buying now because they're taking advantage of stimulus and grants from the Reserve Bank, lowest interest rates in living memory. They're taking advantage of all these grants the government has given towards property. And many of these buyers had been looking for a while, and all of a sudden they've got less competition. So they've decided to pull the trigger and buy property because they're buying for the long term, and they're buying a home for their family based on their life, not on the market. And because they're not concerned about trying to nail buying at the bottom of the market, which by the way is very hard to do, because the only way that you know the market has bottomed is when the market has actually gone up, because you can look backwards and say that was the bottom back then. So Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I would suggest that if you like the property, it meets your needs, and since you're moving in and you're going to be living here for quite a few years, that you should make a decision based on your life and not based on the market. So guys and girls, as you're watching this video, I want you not to catastrophize, not to have faulty thinking about the future. You can still go ahead with your work in a certain way at the moment. I'm suggesting things are going to change even further on the weekend. And then what we might have to be doing is working within the guidelines of what agents are doing in New Zealand. And that is going to be about virtual inspections. And I'm pleased to let you know that realestate.com is actually moving very, very fast on making virtual inspections a common thing on every property. You're going to have information from realestate.com on virtual inspections, but we are moving into a world where people are going to be using technology to inspect a lot of properties, and I've got to let you know there are a number of companies that can actually help with that, and realestate.com is fully supporting virtual inspections. A couple of other things, and then we're going to move on to vendor paid advertising. Number one, I want to help you understand at the moment, Zoom must become your best friend. Google Hangouts is another option. There's a heap of companies, but good real estate agents are adapting by using technology. You can do Zoom to have vendor meetings. You can do Zoom to actually take people and have a tour of the property. I want you to understand you don't also need to have a video crew at every property. You can now shoot mobile phone videos, and realestate.com allow for that on their platform. I also want you to understand that good agents are bringing deals forward. What they're doing is they're bringing deals forward, and they're not waiting for, long down auction dates. Other things that are going on in New Zealand as we're speaking, you have got real estate vendors that are on the market that are actually going off and doing a tour of the property and showing people that want to look at what their property is inside. That's because an agent can't actually be at the property there. Couple of other things I want you to, and for me, you know what it is? It's like, it's business as usual, but in a very unusual way. And I think that's a good piece of dialogue when you're talking to both buyers and sellers. I also want to let you know, right now is a time to sow. And what I mean by that is this, listen to me carefully. The time you plant the seed is not the time you eat the fruit. And for many of us, the next few months are going to be times when we're becoming real estate fit, where we're reimagining what our business is to look like. The truth is, we're going to come out of this at some point. I don't know when, whether it's weeks or months, but I do know when we come out of it, we would have adopted some new practices about the way we go about business, and that's a good thing. The other thing I want you to understand is right now, the most important thing, any real estate agent watching this, brain tattoo this in your head. This is the time for you to get on the phone and to ring up every buyer you've ever met in recent times and work out who is still buying. And then you stick to these buyers like a stamp sticks on an envelope. They're your buyers. You don't spend time too much with the opportunistic buyer. You're dealing with vendors that want to sell and buyers that want to buy. That is your agenda for the next month or two. And I also want to let you know that this is the time that you do the inner work and you work on yourself, for yourself, by yourself. I don't want you to get off track. I want you to understand that good times at the moment, maybe not here, but good times are coming. But you have to understand that this is a period for you. It's a season that's a challenging season, but listen to me. Your current situation is not your final destination. Keep your eyes on the prize, stay healthy, and let's move in to vendor paid advertising. So this webinar, when originally scheduled 6 weeks ago with the team from realestate.com, had an emphasis on me covering VPA, scripts, dialogue, and the templates. And what I'm going to do is get my team that's working with me from my studio here. I've got Liam and Harry's going to move on to the next slide here, where I'm going to be covering for you a couple of things that why VPA is so important. VPA is important because I want you to understand vendor paid advertising will actually allow more buyers to see a property. It's also going to allow you to have the opportunity to have vendors to listen to the feedback, because a vendor won't have a plan B. You see, when a vendor invests in marketing, they're going all in, particularly if it's a good campaign. I also want you to understand that more buyers creates more competition, and competition is what drives prices up. Competition wins the World Cup. Competition drives the share market up, and competition gets top dollar in real estate. And I want to let you know that it is all about marketing. Another good reason why you should be an agent that is obsessed with vendor paid advertising is that it helps you build a brand. Let me be clear, that's not the reason why you get vendor paid advertising. It is a byproduct of vendor paid advertising. That is why I want you to become world-class at the VPA component of real estate. If it's okay, we're going to move on to that next slide now, and I'm going to cover the next bit that we want to talk about, and that is that what you've got to do. Gang, guess what? We had a disconnection. I am sorry about it. Internet problem, and I'm letting you know we're back in. It is beyond our control. We don't know why it happened. What we do know is over the last 48 hours, most services have been stretched. But we are back on, and I'm going to wait for this audience to build up again. And what I'm going to do is, as that's happening, I'm going to move on to the next slide if we can. And what that slide is, and let's move on to the next one. Beautiful. Okay, guys and girls, as that slide is on the 30-day curve, I want you to understand that in real estate, we have got a short period of time to get people's attention. And for me, the 30-day curve is critical, because what you'll notice, on that slide, as you're staring at it there, you'll notice that in the first 30 days is where you get most buyers. After that, the property starts to sort of dwindle off interest. And what I want you to be saying to a vendor is, Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, I want you to understand, I refuse to mismarket your home and apologize later. Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, we only get one opportunity to make a good first impression. The first 30 days, we've got the eyeballs. After that, properties start to move into the stale zone. We want to be in the sweet zone when they're looking at it. Let's move on to that next slide there. And that next slide there is going to talk. When you're sitting in front of a vendor, you've got to be talking about the 4 buyers. Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, I want to let you know, there are 4 buyers in the marketplace. There is the local buyer, the out of area buyer, the passive buyer, and the active buyer. And I want to let you know that when I go out into the marketplace, I'm not looking for the first buyer, I am looking for the best buyer. And the way I'm going to get the best buyer is I'm going to outmarket the competition, show as many people the property that I can, and then we're going to get the best ones to fight over it. Let's move on to the next slide. The next slide is about talking how you go about marketing a property. And I want you to learn this dialogue. When you're sitting at a listing presentation and you're sitting in front of a vendor, you've got to say, Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, would you like me to present you with a marketing program to make you happy, or a marketing program to get you top dollar? Because I refuse to mismarket your home and apologize later. My job is to go out into the market and get you that 10% premium. And the way that we're going to do it is we're going to treat your property like we're launching a new iPhone. We're going to market it everywhere. And I've got to let you know that one of the most effective ways for us to market is to be on realestate.com, because that's where all the eyeballs are. And I want you to know that we're going to be using Premier. Why? Because if we don't actually use Premier and just put your property on just the website with nothing standing out, we're going to be putting a billboard in the forest. No one is going to notice it. Our job is to outmarket the competition, and I'm letting you know, Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, you've got to stand out to win out in this marketplace. Guys and girls, as you're looking at that slide there, which is a nice simple diagram that you can draw on an iPad or on a piece of paper when you're sitting there with the vendors at a listing presentation, what you've got to do is go through the different components. And as you can see, we're going through, and I want to recap. I've got my team here. How are we going there, Harry? We're all traveling well. Okay, so what you'll notice is I've gone through and I've talked about the various components that you've got when you're marketing a property. You'll notice I talk about realestate.com. I talk about the agent website. I talk about a window display. I talk about your CRM system. I talk about print. I talk about direct DL drop or just listed drop. I talk about audience maximizer, which is another great product that you can use with realestate.com. The e-brochure, the window display. Sorry, I've gone over window display 2 times. You could turn around and say that could be social media, right? Guys and girls, listen to me. A good piece of dialogue. Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, we've got to make sure that our offline and online are in line. Marketing works in combination, not in isolation. And Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, I want to go out there and get you top dollar. And the way we're going to get you top dollar is by having a complete marketing program, not a partial marketing program. If we can, Harry, move on to that next slide there. And what I want to touch on here is this template is very good for those of you that are auction-based agents. What you're doing here is showing a vendor that there's a correlation between marketing. Marketing brings a bidder. A bidder brings a bid. A good piece of dialogue is to be sitting there to an owner and saying, Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, here's a case study. This property, 27 Smith Street, Remuera, went to auction, reserve of $1 million, sold for $1,105,000. I want to go through where the buyers came from. You see, when you go through this template, what you're doing is you're showing to an owner more marketing equals more bidders. More bidders equals more bids. Templates are a good way to tell a story. Next slide. The next slide is what I call the case study slide. And what you want to do is be sitting there at the listing presentation and showing a vendor properties that you've sold previously and create a breakout box and a story. As you can see, here's an example of a property sold for $870, was listed at $870, sold for $860. It goes through and it talked about various KPIs, days on market, the fee that you charge, the marketing investment. Why? It's a story. Stories sell, facts tell. Be a good storyteller. It is far more effective if you're showing case studies that are relevant to the property that you're presenting for the owner. And I think you should have about 2 to 3 case studies. What you're doing here is creating social proof and showing an owner. You're showing an owner that they're not a guinea pig in an experiment. Let's move on to the next slide. The next slide is very simple. It is what I call a dashboard, and that shows the last 6 properties you've sold, what they sold for, what method was sold for, how much marketing was invested. And what you're doing is you're showing people this is what others have done. You'll find that clients want to do what others have done. Clients want to walk in to a cafe, obviously not right now as we're shooting this video. They're walking into no cafes unless they're getting a takeaway. But in a normal world, what people do is go where the others are going. And what you're doing with this slide is showing clients out there, this is what my last 6 clients did to sell their house and get a good result. You've got to be in line with that. My rough gauge is that you should be investing in marketing roughly between 0.5% and 1% of the value of the property towards marketing. Let's move on to that next slide if we can, Harry. And the next slide for me is scripts. And I want to touch on a little bit on scripts. And I want you to understand, I don't want you to be a robot. I don't want you to be a commission breath person. I simply want you to use 50 words, not 1,000 words. Why? Never use 1,000 words when 50 will do. We've got clients in 2020 that are time poor. They know the price of everything and they know the value of nothing. And what they don't want is someone sitting there taking 10 minutes to explain something that can be explained in a short 30-second script. I actually think the definition of scripts and dialogues are telling the truth efficiently. So what I want to do is go through some scripts and dialogues that you can use on vendor paid advertising to help you when you're sitting there at the table in front of a vendor trying to encourage them to invest in marketing. The first piece of dialogue is when you're using that round circle, that chart, the diagram where I showed all the components of marketing. A good piece of dialogue to use is, Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, we've got to make sure that our online and offline is in line. Another good piece of dialogue is this, Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, we need to use a total marketing campaign because marketing works in combination, not in isolation. Sometimes you're going to face a vendor that's going to say, oh, but the other real estate agent said that they've got lots of buyers on their database already, or that they can actually just sell it on Facebook or Instagram. The dialogue that you should use there is this, Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, would you like to sell it to the first buyer or the best buyer? Our job is to find all buyers, then get them to fight against themselves. That's how we get top dollar. Now, out of role play for a moment. If you've got a vendor who is very resistant, towards marketing, I say meet them where they're at. Don't fight them. Sit there and say, hey, listen, if you want to do a phase one approach, that's fine. Let's test that for around a couple of days. Let's get some buyers through. But if your property is not sold in phase one, what I'd like to do is to come back and revisit it, because there's only two reasons why properties don't sell in a normal market. Either the price is too high or the marketing is poor. Let's go off, try as a phase one, and then come back and revisit it in a few days and see what the buyers are saying. Because I believe that sometimes you can lose a listing if you actually are beginning to have a fight with a vendor over marketing at the listing presentation. There's a saying, try to never educate without control. When have you got control? When you've signed up the listing. Sometimes people say, hey, but the other agent said we're going to try for 2 weeks without any marketing. And what I say is this, Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, if you don't want to market for 2 weeks, that's fine. I just wouldn't do it the first 2 weeks. And the reason I say it is this. It would be like holding a wedding and inviting everyone at the wedding and having a great DJ, a videographer, a photographer, having everyone gone off and they look amazing, the bridal party, the bride looks amazing with a dress, and the reception hall is extraordinary. But for some reason, you decide we're going to leave out the food. And that is what happens when you cut things out of a component of a property. You might style it, you might have it looking good, you may have gone off and done some touch-ups on the property, and then for whatever reason, you didn't go off and do a full marketing campaign. Do you know that there's a law called the law of product? And the law of product says it's not the best product that wins in the market, it's the best marketed product that wins in the market. And I want to let you know, in real estate, it's the best marketed home that wins in the market, not necessarily the best home that wins in the market. And that's why you've got companies like McDonald's, Coca-Cola, who are obsessed with marketing, because they might not have the best tasting product, and that could be up for debate on a Big Mac, but guess what? It's still the #1 selling burger because it's the best marketed burger. Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, we want to make your home the best marketed home. Another good piece of dialogue is this. Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, what's more important to you? The risk of over-marketing by a few $1,000s or the risk of underselling by $50,000? That is using a principle from Daniel Kahneman, who won a Nobel Prize in 1979 for behavioral economics, that says people will feel more pain losing $1 than pleasure winning $1. So when you're sitting there at a listing presentation, don't just say, hey, give me $4,000 in marketing so we can put it on realestate.com and Premiere and put Audience Maximizer and have an e-brochure and go off and get a video. No, what you say is, Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, here's the marketing campaign. Can I ask you, what's more important to you? The risk of over-marketing by a few $1,000s or the risk of underselling by $50,000? Another good piece of dialogue is this. When a vendor is resistant towards marketing, Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, I've seen many owners lose tens of thousands of dollars at the time of sale because they tried to save a few $1,000s at the time of listing. Let me show you how to avoid that mistake. Sometimes using a metaphor can really drive the point through down to a vendor. Like, for instance, say this, Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, can I ask you, how much money do you spend each year on car insurance? And they'll say, oh, I don't know, like $1,000, $2,000. You say, so you spend $2,000 each year protecting a car, which is a depreciating asset. It's going down all the time. It's metal. You spend $2,000 insuring something that's worth $40,000. Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, I'm advising to you that you should invest a few $1,000s to ensure that we don't undersell the biggest asset you own, the family home, which is the last remaining tax haven in Australia. Sometimes I've got to say to you that the best piece of dialogue to use is this: Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, it is the process and not the promise of a price that's going to get you top dollar. Can I go through our process? This is how we go about marketing a property. Now, I want to let you know that you're going to get this presentation sent to you, and I want you to practice, rehearse. Now, during this coronavirus period where you've got a bit of time at your own home, you've got the opportunity to go pro, to become the most real estate fit real estate agent you can become by learning the dialogue, learning the language, learning the scripts, because listen to me very carefully, words matter, words change lives. And if you adopt this strategy, you'll be adopting what the top 1% of real estate agents across Australasia are doing to succeed. They are marketing-based agents. And I'm hoping that you understand that if you nail this marketing piece, you're going to become an agent that's an attraction agent. And there's a saying, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. If you learn the art of vendor paid advertising, you learn the art of becoming an attraction agent. I also want to touch on, right, in an era of 2020 where there is so many products around, vendor financing, and there's a number of organizations that can provide marketing solutions, you know. Campaign Agent is one that comes to mind, where it allows people to actually invest in marketing but not have to pay for it now. And when they've got the property sold, they can cover it then. That is one of the great options. There's a number of options out there for you to actually go off and explore that. It's really simple. You say to the vendor, hey, you don't have to pay for it now if you don't have the money. You can pay now or pay later. This means that you're getting rid of that friction point towards marketing. So I'm going to come towards an end of this webinar, and I want to recap what we covered today, particularly because we had a bit of a disruption through the video because of a tech issue. Let me go through it. Number one, we are in unprecedented times, and I want to let you know that you are not to get distracted. You are still to look after your clients and to look after yourselves and your family. Don't catastrophize. This time will pass, and learn to adapt. Number two, you are to immediately follow the rules that the Australian government has set, and that is that you are to cancel open for inspections, to go onto your marketing collateral and to put down inspections by appointment. And if they're auctions, you either auction them today or you do auction online, and you look at the methods I talked about early on in the video. You are to be compassionate and empathetic to people in the community right now because it is a very challenging time. If you're selling properties that are investment properties and there are tenants in there and the tenants don't want you to go in because of concern about coronavirus spread, you are to respect them. Yes, I understand the legislation says that you can give people notice and what have you, but this is a time for care. And listen to me carefully. If you want to win share of market, you've got to win share of heart. This is the time that you as an agent, you're in a unique position. You're actually immersed in your community. This is a time for you to actually get closer to your community. This is a time for you to get on the phone and speak to people. And sometimes it's going to be calling them and say, hey, if you haven't spoke to anyone for a long time, just get on the phone and say, hey, look, I know you're in my database and I want to apologize. I should have been in contact earlier. I'm just calling to let you know at our office at the moment, we're still working. It's sort of business as usual, but in an unusual way. And I want to let you know that if there's anything that I can help you with to do with the real estate front, I'm around the place. I realize that life's a bit different, but is there any way that I can help you? Any questions you want me to answer at the moment? That's the sort of conversations. And I've got to let you know, people, at the end of the day, People are not looking for a real estate agent. They're looking for someone who cares. They're looking for a good human being, and this marketplace is calling for that. In addition to that, we covered vendor paid advertising. We covered scripts, we covered dialogues. We showed some of the templates that you need to be using. We covered some of the products that are available for you to stand out in a marketplace. We also covered what you've got to do in terms of asking vendors to invest in marketing and giving them the option, not saying this is how to market your place, saying to them, what marketing campaign do you want? One to get you top dollar or one just to make you happy now? And I've got to say, if you have got a real estate agent that's going out there in your marketplace, trying to undercut the marketplace, one of the best pieces of dialogues you can do is say this to them: Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, the cheapest agent and the best agent is generally not the same agent. Sometimes when they'll say, oh, but the other agent said that they're gonna, save me this by charging me only this and not do the marketing, I would simply say this: I've seen a lot of owners sell for tens of thousands of dollars less at the time of sale because they tried to save a few $1,000s at the time of listing. Let me show you how to avoid that mistake. This has been Tom Panos for realestate.com, coming to you live. It is unprecedented times, but it's times for people to show leadership. It's times for a real estate agent, a real estate owner, a real estate property manager, all to show leadership. And I'm going to let you know, be the change you want to happen. I'm signing off for realestate.com. Thank you. This has been Tom Panos from the Real Estate Gym.